A listener production.
Hey, Bension Siebert here with the briefing. You may have heard the United States is back with its ex. In the early hours of this morning, Donald Trump was sworn in as US President once again. And on the inauguration invite list, none other than Australia's richest person, mining magnate Gina Rinehart, and not too far behind, packaging mogul and fellow Australian billionaire Anthony Pratt. Rinehart and Pratt were so delighted by Trump's re-election, they each spent no small amount of money buying full-page ads in major American newspapers just to congratulate him. Isn't that nice? They join a growing list of billionaires. Elon Musk, of course, and most recently Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, doing everything short of getting on their knees and physically kissing Trump's ass to prove just how much they love and support the new president. Australia needs the United States for all kinds of things, from our national security to our economy. So could having Australia's most wealthy in the new president's orbit actually be a good thing for the rest of us? On the other hand, just this morning, video emerged of Trump buddy Elon Musk giving an apparent Nazi salute. Is Trump just giving the world's richest people permission to show us their worst versions of themselves? Ben Doherty is a Walkley Award-winning journo from The Guardian Australia, and he's been deep diving into these relationships and what they could mean for us. Ben, welcome to the briefing. What were Gina Rinehart and Anthony Pratt doing at Trump's inauguration this morning?
I think this is really interesting, this galaxy, I suppose. I'm not sure what the collective noun for billionaires is, but this galaxy of billionaires that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with and who are choosing to surround Donald Trump. I think there are some really serious questions about what that means for America's democracy, what that means for their global influence, what that means for the influence those people will have on Donald Trump and what influence Donald Trump will have on those people, and what that means for all of us who live in this world. America is the last remaining superpower, and what happens in America matters all around the world. Why are Gina Rinehart and Anthony Pratt at the inauguration? Why are they taking out ads in the New York newspapers that are in Donald Trump's hometown? I'd argue it's self-interest. I think they see the way the political winds are blowing, they see Trump in the ascendancy, and they see a very transactional president. They see a man unworried about institutions and unworried about the sort of political mores that have existed for generations. They see a man that is, I'll do something for you if you do something for me. They want to be in the tent. They want to be in the Florida resort, I suppose, not outside it, because it's those who are at the tent, those who are at the table, those are the ones who are going to benefit from Donald Trump's policy decisions. They're going to get win the government contracts. They're going to have the ability to shape policy. And it's kind of not even hidden, I would argue. I mean, it's not hidden in any way. And almost like a kind of kid at Christmas, they've listed what they want from the new president. Gina Rinehart in her missive sort of said, she addressed it to the outstanding leader, and she said, who understands that high government tape, high regulation and taxes do nothing to encourage investment. She's basically asking, you don't need to decode this. She's very publicly asking Trump for a low-tax, low-regulation environment in which to do business. Now, look, they're kind of policies that Trump likes anyway, but this is kind of making sure of it and getting your bid in. And Pratt was very similar, talks about being honoured to make America great again by bringing manufacturing jobs back home. So I see a lot of self-interest in what's going on, what we saw at the inauguration today, but I see that self-interest flowing both ways.
Is it amazing, particularly with Anthony Pratt, a man that Donald Trump reportedly once called a red-haired weirdo, is at the table in this way?
Look, I don't think so. I think Trump needs to be understood as a very different president, as a very different political animal. He is a transactional human being. He's a deal maker, famous, the art of the deal, all of this sort of stuff. And he sees someone he can do business with, someone he can get on side, someone who will do things that he can then promote as his greatness for president. So Anthony Pratt brings some manufacturing on shore, opens a new factory in America. Trump says, I did that that happened in my presidency. That's what I've been able to do. He sees benefit for himself in this. I don't see that as particularly strange. I think Trump turns on people very quickly, and we've seen that. It strikes me as very Trumpian language to call him the red-headed weirdo from Australia. And I think people can fall out of favour very quickly. I mean, people have been calling it for a while that the Elon Musk, Donald Trump bromance, is going to end in tears and those sort of things. It hasn't yet. We saw a lot of Musk today. But I think that you're only in the tent and you're only close and you're only at the table as long as you're useful to him. As long as Trump sees you as being, of some utility, then he'll keep you close, but he'll discard you just as quickly, I suspect.
So what is the quid pro quo here then? What are these billionaires getting from Trump, and what is Trump getting from them?
I mean, Musk is going to be part of this DOGE, this government efficiency. I think, Trump even talked about, they're going to stick a Stars and Stripes flag on Mars. Maybe there are, significant government contracts flowing the way of Elon Musk's other companies. I do think there's a lot of self-interest, not only for sort of direct government contracts, but also for creating an environment that benefits their business, that helps their bottom line, essentially. They want a president on side who can change the regulatory environment, change the laws to benefit them. On the other side, a lot of the people who we saw today, a lot of the people who we know have been visiting Trump at Mar-a-Lago, and there's this kind of almost like sort of paying a visit to the Pope. You go and you go to the Vatican, pay fealty. You go to Mar-a-Lago and you sit at the table, and we've seen Zuckerberg go from Meta, we've seen Amazon's Jeff Bezos, we've seen Tim Cook from Apple. A lot of these people own social media platforms that bypass the traditional media platforms that Trump is so suspicious of. They own these social media platforms that speak directly to Trump's voters, directly to Trump's audience. They have immense power. They have immense influence. They can disseminate information and misinformation and disinformation incredibly quickly all around the world. So he sees that influence as being something he can harness and he can manipulate. But it does go the other way as well. And I suppose the question is who's influencing whom, who's in whose pocket.
Assembling all of these billionaires, particularly at the inauguration, particularly at this kind of event where there are select world leaders who were invited but not others, does it send a message that Trump is saying to the world, the billionaires are kind of in charge now?
I don't know that it would be as overt as that. He likes to surround himself with these sorts of people. He would regard these people as successful, as winners in life, and people like him. And I think he sees that as this new elite that's going to be running America. Whether he would concede that these guys are in charge, I'm not sure. I don't think his ego quite allows that. I think he wants to be the guy in charge, but he wants these. I think he likes the idea of very powerful people paying fealty to him, sort of honouring him and acknowledging him as the leader of the free world, essentially.
You mentioned Elon Musk before, and something that's actually going viral right now as we speak is this vision of Elon Musk apparently what looks like giving the Nazi salute in front of Trump supporters.
Anyway, let's look at one of these tech billionaire oligarchs speaking at the inauguration.
My heart goes out to you.
Did he just say Heil?
It is thanks to you.
What? Do you think that this collection of billionaires and the relationship that Trump is having so overtly with them means that they'll kind of be off the leash in terms of their politics and their public persona, that he's giving them permission to be more extreme than they might have otherwise been in public?
I think that's a really insightful point, and I think you're absolutely right. And I've seen the vision of Elon Musk, and people are going to analyse it one way or another. It looks very much like a Nazi salute. Whether he intended in that way, some people are going to interpret it that way. It's gone all around the world. It's going to be everywhere. We're talking about it. These sorts of things are kind of, as you say, off the leash here and completely unhinged. And I think one of the things that Donald Trump's first presidency has done, and what his second presidency in its early hours is already demonstrating it's likely to do, is to kind of open up this space for incredibly inflammatory and divisive rhetoric, for the old sort of guardrails to sort of fall away, and people will be more extreme. People will be more unhinged in some people's views. Somebody giving a fascist, a Nazi salute at a presidential inauguration is an extraordinary thing. But this is, I think, the political landscape that we are back in again. Trump 2.0. And he's kind of promised that this will be a kind of a more unfettered presidency.
In the Australian context, not long ago, we heard Gina Rinehart making a speech to a Liberal Party engagement, I think it was, saying that she wanted for us to make our bank accounts great again. It's sort of like a sense of shamelessness almost that has come into the politics.
Yeah, and a kind of almost reveling in it. Like there is no hidden agenda here. The agenda that they're putting out there is the agenda they want. Like, we just want to make more money. We want a world where we can fill our coffers, and we want to drill, baby, drill, and all of these sorts of things. There is a shamelessness about it. There's a kind of gaudy front about the whole thing, and I think that is the new political environment we've been living in now for 8 hours.
One thing that does separate Trump from other US presidents is the degree to which he is not distancing himself from his own businesses, his own investments, his own interests. He doesn't take conflict of interest. He doesn't care about that sort of stuff. Do you think that we could see Trump making his own personal business deals with people like Gina Rinehart or Anthony Pratt during this presidency?
Look, there's every possibility. I think it's hard to say yes or no to that second proposition. But your first, about those specific deals. But I think your first proposition is right, that those old political mores, those old conventions, I suppose, and you need to remember that democracies are built on convention. They're built on people agreeing to play by the rules, even if those rules aren't written down in law. And you look at someone like Joe Biden, was a classic institutionalist, believed in the institutions of American democracy. Believed in things like the separation of powers and conflict of interest and all of those principles. They are guardrails that don't control Donald Trump. Donald Trump will act in Donald Trump's own interests, and he will pursue those with whichever capability he has. He will pursue policies that he sees benefiting his presidency, but also benefiting himself.
Can you see these special relationships having an impact that's tangible on the Australian economy and therefore on regular people in Australia, for example, with our mining or with our exports or the way that we get energy in this country?
I think so. I think people like Anthony Pratt and Gina Rinehart, perhaps James Packer, others who have the ear of the president, will be able to influence policy to a degree. People often say about Donald Trump is he agrees with whatever the last person said to him. And I think there is the potential for those Australian billionaires to have an influence on Donald Trump's policies that then influence the way Australia's relationship with the US goes. But I still think more fundamentally than that, the institutions of government have that relationship. And this is what lots of people on the Australian side of the relationship will talk about, is that presidents and prime ministers come and go, but the sort of governments endure and the relationship endures. So a lot of the work will still be being done by officials in DFAT and the US State Department, by ambassadors going both ways, by ministers and secretaries going back and forth. That relationship will still exist. This might just be another channel of information going back and forth and influence going back and forth, I suppose. I don't think it replaces that machinery of government. I just think it's a kind of adjunct to it. It'll be a more influential one in this administration than has been previously, but it's not going to replace, as much as Donald Trump might like to talk about draining the swamp and getting rid of all of those sorts of things, I still think those things endure.
Do you think that these relationships might help, for example, Donald Trump not put tariffs on Australian exports?
I do think there'll be a lot of work done along sort of both of those tracks, if you know what I mean. I imagine there are people like Pratt and Rinehart in Trump's ear saying, Australia's a good friend to the US, the trade surplus works in your favour, we're not a country that should be attracting tariffs, we're on side with you. I think the Australian government, the embassy in the US, all of those government officials are going to be making the same argument. If he's hearing from friends of his in this billionaires club that he's got assembled around him saying, look after Australia, Australia's your friend, then absolutely, that's likely to be a message he's going to listen to.
Do you think Anthony Albanese might be just slightly jealous of these people and their close friendship with Donald Trump?
Jealous. I don't know if jealous is quite the right word. I mean, they strike me as not very similar characters, and I don't know that they particularly want to be friends. I think his relationship with Trump, again, will be on that political level. It's going to be more transactional than it has been previously. But as a Prime Minister, whose politics, I suppose, don't align with Donald Trump's, he's going to have to rely on that enduring government-to-government relationship that's already been laid down, that foundation that already exists.
And with these economic things that we've been talking about, do you think that regular people in Australia will see any effect or benefit from the relationships that people like Gina Rinehart have with Donald Trump? Or will all the benefit just basically go to the billionaires themselves?
Well, I suppose it depends how you carve that up, because Gina Rinehart would make the argument that if her company can make more money and employ more people and benefit Australian industry, then everybody benefits. Like there are different ways to carve this, and modern economies are such complex, interrelated entities. But I do think something like the tariff question has the real potential to have an impact on Australian exports and our trading relationship there. So there is the potential that for those relationships to influence, as you say, ordinary, everyday Australian lives.
Ben Doherty, thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Guardian Australia journalist Ben Doherty there. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. We'd love it if you could share this app with someone you think might enjoy it. If you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast, and on TikTok and YouTube, search Listener Newsroom. We'll be back in your feed tomorrow from 6 a.m. I'm Bension Siebert. Catch you next time.